Hello, everyone. Tonight we are dropped into the heart of a deserted rainforest so dense and alive that you can almost feel the vines breathing around you. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You gasp for breath as you scramble to your feet, the humid air pressing against your skin like a wet blanket. Thick vines cling to your arms and legs, tugging at your clothes as you stumble backward. The canopy above is a living quilt of shifting green sunlight filtering through in golden shafts that illuminate swirling motes of dust and unseen insects. You taste bitterness in your mouth, blood, adrenaline, and something sour from the ruptured flask rolling at your booted foot. Your mind races trying to piece together how you ended up here. One moment, you were guiding a small charter flight over unexplored territory, and the next, the world pitched into chaos as alarms blared and the engines stuttered. The crash threw you clear of the wreckage, but the canopy cushioned your fall leaves and branches, breaking your bones, or so you hope. Pain lances through your side when you inhale, but you push it down. Right now, staying conscious matters more than an X-ray verdict. The sky overhead is bruised with early evening clouds, heavy with promise of rain. You glance back toward the handful of burning embers you salvaged from the cockpit's ruptured fuselage. Smoke still curls upward, a signal flare to anyone searching below. But as the last tendrils of daylight fade, you know that signal will be swallowed by the oppressive darkness within minutes. Your hands tremble as you scan for shelter. A fallen coconut palm lies angled against a thick trunk some 20 feet away. You haul yourself forward, ripping away fronds with jagged tears. The leaves scrape across your palms, filaments tugging at your cuticles. You weave vines through the skeleton of fronds, bending the branches to form a crude lean-to. Your fingers go numb, stripped raw by thorny tendrils and damp fibers, but you work faster, driven by the primal urge to escape the night's imminent danger. Suddenly, the first drops of rain pelt your shoulders cold as shattered glass. You bend lower, lashing the roof tighter, twisting limp vines into knots that won't hold unless you force them. Mud seeps under your knees, soaking your pants in an icy chill that travels straight to your spine. The thunder crashes overhead like a monstrous drum, rattling loose branches and sending startled bats flitting through the gloom. Inside your fragile refuge, you huddle against the trunk, pressing your back to the textured bark. It's wet and slick, but it feels like an ally compared to the blackness beyond. You wrap your arms around your torso, but every gust of wind sends a shiver rippling through your bones. You remind yourself that hypothermia can strike just as mortally as any predator in these woods. You whisper to the night, promising yourself you won't let fear paralyze you. A distant caw echoes through the canopy, unresolved and eerie. You clutch the remnants of a metal flare launcher. A single red flare remains. Fumbling it out of your pocket, you weigh the choice, light it, and risk drawing the attention of every blood-hungry insect and hidden animal, or save it for a moment when your last hope rests on a vivid beacon in the sky. The rainforest will swallow light as easily as sound, and you doubt anyone above even knows where you are. Your ribs protest as you shift position. You need water, food, fire essentials you might not find again if this night crushes you. But for now, you close your eyes and focus on controlling each gasp, each weakened heartbeat. You draw on lessons learned in survival school, but theory can only carry you so far when your stomach growls with starvation and your skin crawls under mosquito bites you haven't yet noticed. Wind rattles the frond roof overhead, and you brace yourself expecting collapse. But it holds for now. You breathe in the damp air, breathe out the panic, and commit to staying alert. You set the flare half out of its casing, ready to strike if the growls beyond the trees grow too close. You remind yourself of the stakes every moment wasted in doubt could be the last. A jagged branch scrapes the side of your shelter. Your pulse hammers against your temples. You clutch the flare's striker between thumb and forefinger, fingertip slick with rainwater. In the pitch-black jungle, you are prey. But somewhere inside you burns a stubborn ember of defiance. You will fight. You will endure. Even if you know deep down that you probably won't survive this, you still fight. You peer into the darkness, ready to ignite that flare, the moment a shape lunges from the shadows. The rainforest watches in silence, waiting to see if you'll stand or melt into its grasp. And with that challenge facing you, you realize that this crash is only your beginning. You wake to the steady patter of rain, each drop drumming on your makeshift frond roof like a relentless percussion. The shelter you built with trembling hands last night holds firm barely, but your body aches from the awkward angles and soaked leaves. You push yourself up every movement, sending sharp jolts through bruised ribs and throbbing joints. Your vision remains blurred at the edges, but the dense green world beyond the shelter's opening is clear enough. Tangled roots, glistening leaves, and muddy ground that squelches underfoot. Your fingers fumble over the rough vine lashings, testing their knots. They're tight, but you know they won't withstand another storm. You trace the outline of the lean-to, a slanted roof of palm fronds, wedged into a forked branch, overhead sides, partially closed to keep the worst of the rain at bay. An opening to the south gives you enough room to breathe and peer out, but not enough to let the wind slice through. It's primitive, fragile, and already leaking in spots. Still, it's better than the open sky. A low groan escapes you as you haul yourself outside. The air is thick with humidity and the rich, damp smell of earth prime mosquito breeding grounds. You press your back against the fallen palm trunk, its bark mottled and slick with moss. The wood is older than you, yet it supports your weight without complaint. You lean your head against it, closing your eyes for a moment to steady your breathing. Your chest tightens, but you force deep, even breaths, reminding yourself that panic could kill you faster than any fever or predator. First order of business, reinforce the shelter before you lose daylight. You stride into the drizzle, leaving a trail of wet footprints. Each step sinks into soft mud and scattered leaves slipping under your boots. You find another fallen frond, but its center spine has split useless for structural support. Still, you tug off its side leaves and weave them into the roof's gaps, filling holes the rain has already exploited. Your hands sting as the frond fibers scrape skin, but you ignore it. The wind picks up, shaking your lean-to like a frightened animal, and you secure a fresh vine around the main support branch, wincing as thorns bite into your palm. The rain intensifies, turning into a spattering roar that blurs the forest around you. You pause to catch your breath, towel off dripping water from your eyes, and grip a sturdy branch as the ground shifts under a sudden downpour. Leaves bend and sway in a frenzied dance, and you realize the canopy overhead is your shield, now protecting you as much as it hinders rescue operations. You consider fire. Last night's embers sputtered out, and there's no guarantee you can relight them. The friction methods you practiced in training feel like an impossible task with soaked wood and trembling hands. Yet fire means warmth, light, and a chance to boil water, an essential step to avoid infection. You decide to try. Scrambling toward a nearby clearing, you spot a handful of dead branches under a tilted log. You lift the log with effort, revealing tender dry fungus and brittle leaves and a bundle of slender twigs. Your pulse rises at the find. You gather them, but the dampness sinks into your bones when you realize everything is soaked. Still, you cling to hope. You break off small slivers of bark from a standing dead tree. The wood inside is relatively dry, and collect handfuls of fibrous bark shreds. Each shiver runs through your arms, reminders of the fever that still coils inside. You pinch trembling bits of bark between thumb and forefinger, rolling them into a loose nest of fluffy tinder. Holding the makeshift bundle under your arm to warm it against your torso, you use your other hand to tear strips of vine into thin cords. Father taught you to make cordage in Boy Scouts. Now, that lesson tastes like salvation. With nimble fingers, as nimble as your battered body, allows you to twist the strips into a stronger rope long enough to lash a tripod over a small pit you quickly dig. You stack the bark nest in the pit, sheepishly place the tiniest twigs above, then larger sticks in a conical pile. It looks like any training manual illustration, but you know it's likely to collapse under its own wet weight. You kneel and cup your hands to shelter an arm's length distance between your mouth and the tinder. Inhale, exhale. You blow softly into the bark fibers, igniting a faint glow of smoldering smoke. Your heart leaps as you see a tiny ember flicker, proof that friction and air can work even here. You feed it gently, adding inch-long slivers of wood and shielding the fledgling fire from rain with a large leaf. It sputters, but it burns. You exhale a relieved gasp, letting warmth spread into your frozen fingers and up your spine. The flame grows to a small flicker, and you exult quietly victory over the jungle's initial challenge. You carefully transfer the fire to the lean-to, carrying the burning sticks like a torch. Inside, smoke curls upward and clings to the fronds' odor, piercing the tropical aroma. The fire crackles against the damp wood, drawing smoky rings into the low ceiling. You fan the flames until the tinder dries surrounding leaves and larger branches, creating a modest hearth near the shelter's entrance. Warmth floods your limbs, and the mosquitoes hesitate, retreating from the smoke's edge. You inhale deeply, savoring the smoky comfort that will let you boil water later. Your mind races with the next list. Gather water, build a water trap, forage for edibles, and find potential medicinal plants. But for now, you lean back on a rock, smoothed by time, and the elements letting exhaustion wash over you. The sky dims further, hues of violet and navy stealing in as twilight approaches. You watch the fire's light dance across dripping fronds and realize that this small beacon represents your first real foothold against the rainforest's raw fury. As darkness settles, you feel the imperative to remain vigilant. Every crack in the frond walls, every whisper of wind through the canopy could herald a shift in fortune, good or bad. You don't dare relax completely. You drag a fallen leaf across the wet earth to clear a seating spot, then close your eyes to inventory your injury, bruised shoulder, a sprained wrist, and a feverish tremor that fades under the newfound warmth. A rustle beyond the shelter prickles your senses. You sit upright, torch in hand, heart pounding. The firelight reveals a small lizard scuttling along a root. You exhale, laughing breathlessly at your own jumpiness. This jungle is alive with creatures far more adapted than you, yet you survive because you adapt. You recognize the shelter's imperfections, the open back puddles forming at the edges, the crack where rain drips. But for tonight it holds. For tonight at least you have a home. You lean forward, arranging larger logs around the hearth to keep the core heat trapped inside. You collect extra vines to patch new leaks, then step outside again to tighten lashings. The rain has slackened to a fine mist, and you work quickly, eyes stinging with raindrops and sweat. When you finish, you sprint back inside slam branches against the opening to block wind and collapse beside the fire. Your breath slows as the warmth seeps in. You press a hand to the warm stones, feeling vitality return where numbness reigned. Tomorrow you'll need to tackle water purification and food, but tonight you have shelter and fire. You huddle close to the hearth, counting mortar-thin seconds of safety before the jungle claims this fragile victory. A distant hoot echoes, insect choruses rise, and somewhere deeper in the darkness, you hear the echo of dripping water. You close your eyes, letting these sounds lull you into a vigilant rest. The shelter may crumble at dawn, but until then, you have carved out a small stronghold beneath indifferent trees. And in this roaring symphony of rain and life, you have found your rhythm steady, determined, desperate to survive. You jerk awake when a tremor runs through your teeth, a chill so fierce it feels like ice crawling under your skin. You're still curled beside the embers, the fire's warmth depleted by the damp air, and the lean-to around you is slick with condensation. Every limb aches, and your muscles feel too heavy to lift. As you push yourself up, brain fog clouds your thoughts, and sweat beads on your forehead, despite the cold that shivers through your bones. You press a hand against your throat and taste salt your own fevered sweat pooling in your mouth. The world tilts as you stand, and you brace yourself against the palm trunk support. You can't remember the last time you felt this weak, certainly not when you hauled those wet fronds into place. Your chest heaves as the residual smoke from last night's hearth burns the back of your throat. Each breath sends a flare of pain beneath your ribs, remnants of the crash that should have healed by now, but instead feels inflamed, as if the fever is surfacing old wounds. Your teeth chatter uncontrollably, and you rub your arms trying to generate warmth. The fronds above drip tiny rivulets that spatter across your scalp. You draw in a ragged breath and remember that you left your crude clay cup by the fire pit. You stagger to retrieve it, but your vision doubles. Two images of the battered metal cup wobble before your eyes. You grip the cup's edge with both hands and lift it to your lips. The water inside is lukewarm and carries a bitter tang from last night's boiled bark. You tip it back in sudden desperation, swallowing each gulp like life itself depends on it, because it does. The foul tonic slides down your throat, numbing the rawness, and you lean overhead, hanging low, as the moth-like insects swirl around the flames. You're supposed to feel better after purging and rehydrating, but instead the world spins faster. You close your eyes, head resting against damp leaves, and think of simpler moments days ago, sipping coffee on the charter plane before the engines died. Those memories feel distant, like someone else's life. A roar of thunder overhead snaps you back. Rain begins its afternoon reprise, stronger this time, drumming against the frond roof, coaxing you into shivering convulsions. Your brow is slick, but cold sweat coats your temples and the small of your back. You move deliberately, each motion a calculus of pain. You must stabilize this fever before it overwhelms you. If you drift back asleep now, you might not wake again. You scan your meager supplies. A handful of fresh leaves you pried from beneath a log, supposedly antibacterial, lie in a pile on a flat stone. You gingerly peel one and chew it, its bitterness coating your tongue. You swallow and follow with a sip of water. Somewhere in your mind, you recall a lesson: certain rainforest plants stimulate the immune response. You spit out the fibrous remnants and chase them with more water, waiting for a cooling sensation. It never comes. Your face heats, and you press a cold leaf to your forehead. The contrast stings, but your pulse throbs beneath your temple. You count beats 1, 2, 3, and feel the fever racing faster than normal. Your throat aches, every swallow scraping raw. You know that untreated malaria can manifest exactly like this: waves of chills, sweats, and deep aches. You'd heard of survivors shivering in blankets of sweat yourself, now included in that grim fraternity. A buzzing flurry draws your attention to your ankles, where clusters of mosquitoes land and probe your skin. You slap reflexively, crushing one against your boot before it can drink. But dozens more fill the air, hungry, persistent. You wave them away, but they return, drawn to your fevered heat and the scent of your skin. You curse under your breath. There's no repellent left except the bitter tonic, and wrapping yourself in soaked clothes offers scant protection. You risk exposing more skin simply to scratch the bites that itch like acid. The rain slackens, and you seize the moment. You hobble to the remains of a shallow ditch you dug for standing water. It's filled with murky liquid. The local streams overflow, and you bend low to scoop with your hands. The water is cloudy and full of debris, but you pour it into the cup and lift it to your lips. You're certain it's contaminated, but boiling seems your only safeguard. Your fever-addled mind weighs the risk of drinking now versus waiting until you reconstruct a fire. You choose now. You swallow the water sliding down course unsettling, but you swallow again. Hydration over hygiene, even if it means another stomach cramp later. A clang of metal jolts you, the flare launcher still twined in vines by the shelter's entrance. You stagger over muscles protesting and prise it free. Red canister intact. You remember last night's choice. Save it for a true emergency. Now, with fever burning through your veins, maybe you are in an emergency. But there's no aircraft overhead yet. You'll need the flare when rescue draws near, not now when you're delirious. You tuck it back, careful not to jar the striker mechanism. You pause, leaning against the cocked tripod of firewood. It's damp, but the embers beneath still glow. You cup your hands around them, coaxing warmth into your palms. You scoot a few inches closer until you can cup your face in the rising heat. The fire crackles and spits as moisture hisses off burning wood. The warmth courses into your chest, slowing the teeth chatter, easing the fever's edge for a moment. You close your eyes, inhaling smoky comfort. You realize you'd fallen asleep here and that the fire saved you from freezing to death. But you can't sleep again, not yet. Your legs tremble when you stand. You trace a shaky finger over your bead necklace memento. From home, its cool glass grounding you. You whisper, "Stay with me to the trinket." You vow to keep moving. A lull in the storm and a flicker of resolve drive you forward. You know the fever will come in waves. You steel yourself for its next assault, reminding yourself that each wave weakens if you can endure it. Your stomach growls hollowly, but your mind fixates on rest. You lean against the lean-to post, closing your eyes as another chill rakes through you. Your teeth lock, and you exhale a ragged breath that fogs the fronds before you. You imagine the capuchin monkey you encountered yesterday, its twitching hand accepting your bitter tonic. You hadn't believed in companionship then, but now you'd give anything for its small warmth. Lightning flashes overhead, illuminating the slick leaves in stark contrast, brilliant green against steel gray sky. You brace for thunder, but it rumbles almost faintly in the distance. The jungle holds its breath. You realize the storm will pass soon, leaving a stagnant, muggy calm that will only feed the mosquitoes. But perhaps it will also bring daylight. And daylight brings clarity, a chance to treat symptoms, forage, and find a path out. Swallowing another mouthful of tonic, you force your chin upward, willing alertness. You survey your body, flushed cheeks, tremoring limbs, and damp hair plastered to your skull. Your chest constricts with each breath, and fear orchids in your belly. But fear can be harnessed. You spread your arms, letting the fronds brush your forearms in a reminder that you are alive, and to stay alive, you must act. You return to the cup and hold it under a small dent in the shelter floor where rainwater has pooled. You fill it halfway and light another couple pieces of firewood to boil it. The crackling flames belch smoke into your face, and you cough, but the steam rising from the water feels like salvation. You prop the cup over the fire with a small tripod of stone. The water begins to bubble, and you press your palms against warm stones to stave off the chills. As you wait, you force your gaze outward, gauging the storm's retreat. Thick clouds drift away, and the forest beyond is a palette of dark greens and browns. Faint shafts of sunlight peek through slivers in the canopy. You inhale hope. For now, the fever remains a threat, but you are not defeated. You will fight the waves of heat and cold, because surrender means certain death in this green abyss. Eventually, the water boils. You lift the cup with a scrap of cloth, test the temperature on your wrist, and sip. The hot liquid burns past your lips and down your throat, chasing away the chill. You drink until your stomach protests, then pour the rest over your head, letting the steam cleanse your pores and cool your feverish skin. You shiver, but this time it's a cleansing shiver, one that promises you've taken back some control. You lean forward, elbows on knees, and close your eyes. The fire's warmth penetrates your bones, and a tenuous calm settles. Your fever remains, but it feels manageable. You breathe slowly, counting each inhalation. You will outlast this high-temperature siege. You just have to stay conscious, stay close to the fire, and keep water boiling. You will survive this, because to give in now would betray every skill you've eked out in the jungle so far. You wake before dawn, the fire reduced to glowing embers that hiss as the last raindrops sizzle on the stones. Your bones protest when you move each limb stiff as if frozen overnight. You pull yourself upright and peer through the frond opening, spotting the lean-to's shadow stretching over a narrow trench you dug for runoff. In the dim light, you see the trench's muddy bottom brimming with pale runoff, but realize that somewhere uphill there must be cleaner water you can reach. You push yourself up, leaving a smear of ash on your arm, and step out. The air is heavy with dew, each blade of grass dripping onto your boots. You follow the faint incline toward a depression you glimpsed last night, a hollow in the forest floor where fresh water often gathers. Underfoot, fallen leaves form a slick carpet as you navigate around knotted roots. Your ribs ache, but hunger and thirst sharpen your focus more than pain. At the hollow's edge, you find a small pool of clear water, its surface mirror smooth, except for the occasional ripple from a dripping leaf above. Relief floods you. This water could quench your thirst, and once boiled, stave off infection. You bend low to scoop with cupped hands, but freeze as a swarm of mosquitoes rises in a cloud black against the faint gray sky. They circle hungrily, drawn by residual smoke from the embers and the heat radiating from your fevered limbs. A dozen land on your wrists, probing for flesh. You snatch your arms away, smacking at the attackers, but more descend, relentless and unforgiving. You inhale sharply, nostrils flaring at the sharp tang of mosquito breath. In a panic, you wave one hand above the pool, wishing the insects away, but they only spread wider, clustering on the pool's edge. Their tiny bodies shimmer in the half-light, a living warning drink, and you invite more bites, and with them disease spells beyond malaria. You grit your teeth. You've survived the crash, the storm, and the fever. You won't let a cloud of insects force your hand. You need this water. Carefully, you gather a length of vine from a nearby sapling, snapping it with a wet crack. You carve one end into a scoop with a sharp stone you pocketed in your shelter, rinsing off mud. You extend the makeshift ladle over the pool, dipping it to the bottom, then lift slowly, trying not to disturb the surface too much. A spray of droplets flings toward the swarm, and they writhe in a trembling mass, unsettled but unwilling to flee. You hiss in frustration, but your heart pounds with adrenaline. You place the vine scoop at your lips and tip it, letting fresh water wash over your tongue. It's crisp, cool, and alive on your senses, so different from the bitter bark tea. You drink slowly, savoring each mouthful, feeling your throat relax and the ache in your chest soften. You keep your other hand ready, slapping away mosquitoes that stray too close. When the ladle empties, you dip again, trying to minimize splashes that attract new attackers. Your head swivels as the forest stirs a distant tap-tap of woodpecker, a rustle of small mammals in undergrowth, and the soft murmur of the wind sifting through leaves. The hollow is a sanctuary for wildlife, which makes it both precious and dangerous. A bird alights on a low branch, eyeing the water. You hold still, and it dips down to drink, oblivious to your presence. In that moment, you feel a kinship, two creatures drawn to the same lifeline despite threat. But the mosquitoes remain an unspoken threat. You dip the vine ladle again, filling it nearly full, and walk backward in measured steps. With each stride, the swarm gains on you, buzzing a sinister hymn. You glance back and see hundreds in pursuit, wings beating in synchronized frenzy. Panic flares, but you choke it back. You must reach the shelter to boil this water safely. You stumble over roots, splashing a puddle that throws droplets into the air, and the mosquitoes dance on the ripples, taunting you. Once inside the lean-to, you slam the frond flap shut, its soaked fibers snapping back into place. You drop the ladle and cup into the dirt, then rush to the hearth. The embers have died to ash, but you still have a handful of glowing coals hidden beneath damp logs. You stir them gently, coaxing a spark, then pile on small sticks you gathered from nearby deadwood. The crackling returns, and flames lick upward, banishing the chill and the buzzing intruders through heat and smoke. You place the vine scoop and cup on a flat stone above the flames, watching water shimmer as it heats. Mosquitoes throng at the shelter's edges, but the smoke drives them back, creating a burnt-smelling buffer zone. You slump against the trunk, cupping your face in your hands, feeling the warmth seep into your skin and sinews. The steam rising from the cup is a promise of life. Your thirst stills as the water boils, tiny bubbles breaking the surface. You lift the cup with a twisted strip of cloth and blow on it until you can sip without burning. The first swallow is glorious, pure water restoring you. Your belly rumbles, reminding you that you haven't eaten since the crash. But today's focus is water, clean water. Food can come after. You fill the cup again from the vine ladle, now cool from sitting, and repeat the heating. Each time the water boils, you pause to check yourself. Fever still flickers on your skin, but you feel steadier. Your head clears enough to think ahead. You must fortify the shelter, extend your supply of clean water, and find nutrient sources. The forest will not yield its bounty without effort and risk. You steel your resolve with a dry swallow, feeling heat spread through your chest. As the third cup of boiled water warms you, you notice a small gap beneath the frond walls. A single mosquito darts through and lands on your forearm. Without hesitation, you swat it dead, then pull a length of vine over the gap, weaving leaves into it until no light penetrates. It's a meager repair, but it brings a surge of satisfaction. You're not merely reacting, you're preempting. This rainforest may be ruthless, but you are ruthless in return. You set the cup aside and exhale a slow, measured breath. Your throat no longer burns, and each sip has eased the fever's grip. Outside, the forest awakens fully. Birdsong weaves through branches, and morning light finally filters in. You lean against the trunk again, scanning the horizon through a slit where the fronds part. The world is wet and wild, and invisible threats hover in every shadow. Yet in this shelter, you have water, warmth, and a plan. You pick up the vine scoop and tuck it inside your shirt, where your body heat will keep it dry. You lift the cup for one last swallow, feeling purpose return to your limbs. You will survive because you can adapt, innovate, and endure. And though the mosquitoes circle, you will not allow fear to stifle your will. You will defeat them one by one in this hollow of life-giving water, and in doing so, you will carve out your place in a world that offers no mercy. You step out of the shelter as the first harsh rays of sunlight slice through the dripping canopy, painting the forest floor in mottled gold and green. Your strength is a fragile thread, but desperation fuels your every move. You must do more than chase away chills or boil water. You need medicine. Malaria thrives in stagnant water and mosquito bites, and you know that bark from certain trees and crushed leaves of local herbs can slow infection even if only marginally. You scan the undergrowth eyes, seeking the telltale signs of useful flora. Your gaze settles on the broad trunk of a fever tree, a pale, smooth bark peeling in curling strips like old parchment. You approach it, heart pounding, and bend to trace the peeling bark with gloved fingertips. Bits of fibrous tissue cling to your gloves. You retrieve your small pocket knife, its blade nicked but serviceable, and slice a thin section of bark. The ivory curl falls into your hand, releasing a faint, bitter scent that pricks your nostrils. You tuck it into your satchel of supplies, an old camera strap repurposed as a pouch. Next, you move toward a cluster of low shrubs with serrated leaves that glisten with morning dew. The local guidebook in your mind lessons, gleaned from jungle survival courses, reawakens. These leaves belong to a willow-like plant whose salicin content can reduce fever and inflammation. You pluck a handful of the leaves, tearing easily between your fingers. You crush them with the flat of your knife blade, feeling the oils release in a pungent green mist. You rub a few onto your wrists to test for irritation. None appears. Relief mingles with hope as you stuff them next to the bark. Your body trembles with residual fever, but you push onward to find a second ingredient, a bitter root reputed to shake parasites from the blood when brewed into a tea. You recall a hollow log you passed near the stream yesterday, where vines hung low. You follow that memory, stepping over a tangle of exposed roots and fallen debris. There, half hidden by ferns, you spot the root's twisted stub emerging from a crack in decaying wood. You pry it loose with your hands, the earth clinging to its knobby surface. It snaps under gentle pressure, revealing dense, yellowing flesh within. You wash it in a small side pool and slice off 2 finger-length pieces with your knife. Your makeshift apothecary now holds fever bark, salicin leaves, and anti-parasitic root. You mentally tally their ratios: 2 parts bark, 1 part leaves, 1 part root. You return to the shelter, each step weighted by fatigue, every breath a reminder of the infection clawing at your veins. When you reach the lean-to, you drop your haul onto a flat stone and arrange them in neat piles. You pause to catch your breath, pressing a hand to your chest as a spike of pain radiates with a cough. You shake it off. Pain is only proof of life. You scavenge for a suitable vessel and find a dented metal flask near last night's fire pit. Its interior is scorched, but clean enough after a rinse with boiled water. You fill it halfway with fresh water drawn from your small purified cache. Then you drop in the bitter bark strips, their edges curling as they hit the hot liquid and release tannins that stain the water a steel gray. You stir with a thin stick until the bark fragments swirl. Next, you add the crushed leaves, their oils rising to the surface in pearly droplets. The salicin's aroma cuts through the bark's astringency, layering the brew with an herbal tang. Last, you tuck in the root pieces, their stiff fibers floating like driftwood. You prop the flask over the fire's hottest coals, using a triangulated bundle of sticks as a cradle. Flames flicker beneath the flask, and you cover it with a stone to trap heat, aiming for a steady simmer. You sit on a moss-covered rock, elbows on knees, hands warmed by the fire's heat. Steam curls from beneath the stone lid, carrying the brew's acrid scent. You close your eyes, inhaling the bitter perfume and imagining the tonic coursing through your veins, stirring white cells to battle the invading parasites. The forest hums around you, and you take in its rhythms, distant drips of water, insect wings thrumming, and the occasional croak of an unseen frog. Each sound reminds you of why you fight to live another day in this relentless green world. After 10 minutes, you lift the lid with a small scrap of cloth to avoid burning your fingers. Tiny bubbles dot the surface, and the liquid's color has deepened to dark charcoal. You stir again, then remove the flask from the coals and set it on a ring of stones to cool slightly. The steam continues, and you brace for the tonic's taste. With trembling hands, you pour a quarter of the brew into your clay cup. You bring it to your lips and sip. The flavor explodes on your tongue, bitter as tree bark tinged with the earthy sharpness of crushed leaves and a rooty undercurrent that snarls at your stomach. Your face contorts on the first gulp, and the bitter compounds cling to your throat as you swallow. You grit your teeth and take another sip, forcing it down. Heat pours through your chest, mingling with the fire's warmth to ignite a comfort you barely remember. As the minutes pass, you finish the cup. The metallic tang lingers, but a faint cooling sensation follows the brew's efficacy in reducing fever, even if temporary. You pour the remainder into a smaller compartment of your satchel for later doses, tightly sealing it with a strip of cloth. You patch the flask's lid with melted resin from a nearby tree wound, crafting a crude seal to keep contaminants out. The resin's scent mingles with the tonic, forming a protective barrier around your medicine. Reinforced by the bitter tonic, you feel a spark of clarity return. The pounding in your temples subsides to a dull throb. You rub your hands on your pants to dry them, then massage your temples to ease lingering pain. The bruise effects are modest, but perceptible, a slight cooling at the nape of your neck and a dulling of the relentless aches. Your mind shifts to what comes next, gathering more firewood for repeated doses, setting traps for protein-rich insects to rebuild strength, and perhaps finding a source of citrus fruits to counter scurvy. But you start with medicine. You cannot bargain with malaria. You must outsmart it by disrupting its cycle in your body. With the tonic at your side, you have an edge. You extinguish the fire, crushing the embers beneath a large stone and covering the pit with mud to avoid attracting attention. Then you rebuild a tiny perimeter of stones around the flask cradle, both to remind you of the bruised location and to create a makeshift altar for your survival, an oath written in charcoal and moss that you intend to keep. You rise unsteadily and tuck the medicine pouch into your shirt pocket, the flask pressing against your side like a heartbeat of hope. You scan the shelter walls. The vines and fronds still hold, but fatigue whispers that they may not last another storm. You make a mental note to reinforce later. For now, you stand tall, teetering, determined. A shaft of sunlight pierces the lean-to's opening, illuminating floating motes of steam that coil above the flask. You step toward it, cupping your hands around the warm metal and breathing deeply. You repeat to yourself, one step at a time, one breath at a time, one cup at a time. You are not just surviving, you are fighting back. In this world of green and shadows, your greatest weapon is the bitter brew you hold in your hands. The midday sun beats down through gaps in the canopy, but its warmth does nothing to soothe your fevered skin. You feel lightheaded as you step outside the shelter, every motion rippling through your aching muscles. Sweat beads on your brow despite the chill that still clings to your bones. You grip the edge of a fallen log for support, inhaling the humid air heavy with the scent of decaying wood and blooming orchids. Somewhere above a toucan caws its call, distant and mocking. Your vision sways at the edges, shifting in and out of focus. You blink rapidly, trying to clear the haze. The forest around you flickers like a failing projector. Vines writhe in the undergrowth, twisting into shapes that resemble serpents. Shadows stretch and retract without any discernible light source. You swallow hard, tasting the metallic tang of your own blood from a small cut on your lip. You place a finger against the wound, feeling throb by throb as your pulse races. A sudden flash of memory hits you back in your childhood bedroom, the wallpaper peeling. You lie sick in bed with a fever that left you delirious. You recall your mother's gentle voice coaxing medicine into you, her hand cool against your forehead. The memory is warm and safe, and you lean against the log eyes closing to savor that moment of care. But when you open them again, the sky has darkened as if clouds have swallowed the sun. The world twists. A figure emerges between two mahogany trunks, tall and elongated, its limbs too long, its head tilting at an unnatural angle. You freeze, heart pounding. The figure's eyes glow like embers, and it raises a hand beckoning you forward. You step back, stumbling over a protruding root. The hallucination melts away the instant your foot hits the ground, replaced by the ordinary sight of twisting vines. You breathe deeply, focusing on the steady rise and fall of your chest. The tangible rustle of leaves in a breeze you can't feel, the distant drip of water falling from a leaf, the rhythmic creak of wood, shifting all real sounds in a forest, alive beyond your senses. You press your hands against your temples, willing the fever's veil to lift. You stagger back to the shelter, slipping past the woven fronds that serve as your walls. Inside the small fire you relit this morning smolders in a shallow pit. You crouch beside the embers, cupping your hands to warm them. You scoop up the remaining embers onto a flat stone and blow gently until a new flame ignites. The hearth blazes to life, sending smoky tendrils curling toward the frond ceiling. The light and heat anchor you, a tangible reality you can grasp. You sit cross-legged by the fire, leaning forward until the warmth seeps into your bones. You reach for your medicine flask and pour yourself a small dose of the bitter tonic. You sip it slowly, letting the herbal sediment settle in your stomach. The bitterness burns as it goes down, but your head feels clearer, the edges of your vision less distorted. Outside, the hallucinations return. You peer through the frond doorway and see dozens of shadowy figures drifting among the trees, their forms half hidden by ferns and bromeliads. They glide toward you silently, their faces blank masks. Fear wells up in your chest, a tidal wave you struggle to contain. You leap to your feet and slam a frond panel shut, plunging the shelter into semi-darkness lit only by the hearth. Your breath comes fast. You grip the flap's lash, tying it tight with a length of vine. Your knuckles whiten and the vine slices into your palm. You ignore the pain raw and immediate and jam the lash against a stick to secure it. The shadows disappear instantly, leaving only the soothing crackle of fire and the scent of burning resin. You slope back down, chest rising and falling like a bellows. You lean against the trunk, pressing your forehead to the rough bark. It feels solid and unyielding, unlike the ghostly forms you just imagined. You rub your eyes, which burn from sweat and smoke, and force yourself to focus on the flitting glow of embers. They swirl and dance, shifting shapes that remind you of koi fish in a pond. You force a slow exhale. You recall the ravenous itch of malaria's fevers, the cyclical surge of heat and inertia. You realize the hallucinations aren't sinister forest spirits, but the fallout of your own body's battle. Your immune system wages war, flooding your brain with toxins that blur the line between waking and dreaming. Understanding this calms you. Somewhat logic anchors you to reality even as your body betrays you. You rise and move to a muddy patch by the hearth where you dried a handful of leafy greens this morning. You pick up a leaf and chew it, drawing saliva through the bitter fibers to clean your palate and steady your nerves. You shred a second leaf, mixing it into the small bowl of cooled water you keep for rinsing your mouth. The cool rinse washes away the first film of feverish haze. You swallow and feel alertness seep back. A low groan escapes you as your limbs protest the motion. You stand steadying yourself against the frond wall, The dream figures intrude again, but they're smaller. This time, brief silhouettes flitting at the edge of vision. You raise a hand and point at them. "Not today," you whisper, voice gravelly. You stomp your foot to remind yourself you're awake. In your mind, you replay the hallucination's sequence, beckoning, root-tripping the moment of visceral terror. You exhale, shaking your head. You've experienced worse storms that threatened to crush your shelter fevers, that rattled your bones. This is but another obstacle. You're not powerless. The fire sputters as you toss on a damp stick. Sparks scatter and sizzle, and you curl your fingers around a smooth stone warmed by the flames. You stroke its surface, its solidity an anchor. You repeat a mantra, breathe, focus, survive. You close your eyes and take 3 slow, deliberate breaths, feeling the warmth flood your lungs, chest, and limbs. When you open your eyes, the hallucinations have receded, replaced by mundane reality. The frond ceiling above the fire pit before you, the familiar array of tools and pouches along the shelter wall. You let out a long breath, shoulders rolling down. You sip more tonic and feel the fever's edges dull further, though exhaustion threatens to pull you under. You know sleep is both ally and adversary. It will heal, but also risk drowning you in fever dreams. You opt instead to keep moving. You scoop fresh water into your cupped hands, splashing your face and neck to cool overheated skin. You rub the water in with your palms, feeling the chill chase away residual heat. You pat yourself dry on your shirt. You leave the shelter and trek to the edge of the hollow. You sourced water from this morning. You dip the vine ladle again and bring it to your lips. You drink deeply, tasting the forest's mineral tang. You trace the hollow's perimeter, gathering a handful of smooth stones. You toss one into the water, watching ripples expand, a reminder that every action, even small, sends shockwaves through this ecosystem and your own survival path. Returning to the shelter, you disperse the stones in a circle around the hearth. Each stone stands as a marker, a tally of defeats you've overcome: crash, storm, fever, hallucination. Each small victory fuels your will. You step back, thumbs hooked in your belt, and survey your domain. The forest is indifferent, but you are not. You press your palms together in a silent vow you will hold this ground, fight back the fevers, and stay lucid enough to act. The hallucinations may return, but you now understand they are symptoms, not sentience. You will outlast them. You will carve clarity from chaos. You will endure. You step outside again as dusk begins to weave indigo threads through the rainforest canopy. The day's fever still hums beneath your skin, but your mind is clear enough to pursue a desperate plan. Light the torch you fashioned from resin-coated bark and dead wood scraps, and use its flickering glow to push back the shadows and insects that swarm around your shelter. You locate your crude torch amidst damp detritus, a bundle of bark strips you hardened by the morning fire, and cradle it like a severed limb, careful not to crush the resin that will feed the flame. The forest air is thick with the tired cries of cicadas and the soft drip of lingering rain. Above you, the first stars peep through gaps in the leaves. You strike a spark by scraping the back of your knife against a flint-edged rock you found near the stream bed. A tiny iron spark arcs through the dark and lands on the torch tip. You lean in, sheltering the spark with cupped hands until a tendril of smoke curls upward. Your heart flutters as flame bursts to life, a warm, ragged tongue licking at damp bark. You raise the torch and step forward, its glow carving a pool of light in the gathering gloom. The firelight dances on dripping leaves, illuminating each droplet as a miniature star. For the first time since the crash, you feel a surge of control. This torch is more than light. It is a weapon against darkness, against mosquitoes, against the dread that gnaws at your mind. You hold the torch aloft as you circle the lean-to, scanning for gaps and weak points. Beneath each frond seam, you tighten vines. Along the front flap, you wedge fresh sticks to stiffen its closure. The torch's heat drives away insects, forcing them back into the murk beyond your outer walls. You pause and lower the flame to study your handiwork. No sliver of moonlight leaks in. No buzzing predators slip through. You nod with grim satisfaction. Turning your gaze outward, you see the jungle alive, with prowling shapes, giant ferns, swaying twisted roots uncoiling, and at least one large bird wiping its beak on a branch. Nothing truly dangerous, but each form could conceal a predator in the dark. Your torch's glow serves as both spotlight and shield, revealing these silhouettes before they can approach too closely. You move away from the shelter torch in one hand, flare launcher in the other. You'll need to conserve the flare for rescue, but having it at the ready lends a brittle sense of security. You sweep the light across the forest floor, searching for resources. A fallen log beams silver in the torchlight, and you examine its base. A cluster of beetle larvae writhes beneath the bark. Protein if you're willing to stomach it, but you hold back. Your stomach churns at the thought. You make a mental note to revisit before sleep, reminding yourself that survival may demand uncomfortable choices. The torch's smoke curls into the fronds overhead, and you breathe it in, savoring the bitter tang. You walk to the shallow trench you dug for water, run off its muddy bottom, now bone dry from the afternoon's heat. You fan embers from the hearth until they blaze again, then prop the torch upright against a sturdy rock so it functions as a stationary lamp. The makeshift beacon flickers, casting elongated shadows that twitch across damp walls. As you secure the torch, you become aware of a sudden hush. The cacophony of evening insects and distant animal calls stalls, as if the forest paused to watch. The air cools abruptly, and you shiver despite the torch's warmth. For a heartbeat, you imagine the world holding its breath. Then the insect chorus resumes louder than before, as if offended by your intrusion. You tackle the task of gathering fuel for the night. The torch's resin supply will dwindle, and you need wood for both fire and future torch making. You stride into the near darkness, torch held high. Each footstep crunches over fallen leaves and brittle twigs. The smoke drifts behind you, a gleaming trail in the murk. You spot deadwood, cradled in a crook of trees, perfect kindling, and pry away thin branches with careful pressure. You stuff them under your shirt to keep them dry, wincing as splinters bite into your ribs. Night insects flank you, drawn to the flame like moths to a lantern. You brush them off as you walk, torch swinging and wood collecting. You know their persistence means water or warmth nearby, both essential to your survival. You gather a modest pile, 10 or 12 sticks, varied in wetness and thickness. You head back heart thumping as something large shifts in the undergrowth, a sign you're not alone. Back at camp, you lay the sticks before the hearth and toss on a small handful. The fire flares, then settles into steady crackles. You retrieve your bamboo cup and fill it with water from your purified cache. Then you let the flames dance, roasting the bark nibblings you salted with small puffs of ash to create repellent. The aroma is sharp, almost medicinal, and you inhale deeply. You smear cooled ashes onto your ankles and wrists, forming a barrier that makes mosquitoes hesitate. You sit cross-legged by the fire torch, propped behind you, and lean forward to sip water. The flame's heat soaks into your chest, undoing the lingering chills of earlier. You lift the cup again, staring into the dancing liquid as if it holds answers. You feel determined, even triumphant. Every tool you've crafted, every flame ignited, is proof of your willpower. You pick up a stick and trace circles in the soft soil before you, mapping plans, extend the trench to channel more clean water, dig a small pit to compost food scraps for bait, and carve a crude spear from a sturdy branch just in case. Each plan is a step toward agency in a land designed to swallow you whole. Your torch dwindles as resin burns away its glow, dimming and color shifting from bright yellow to smoky orange. You lift it free from its rock cradle to inspect the bark is charred, brittle, but not yet spent. You layer on fresh sticks to revive the flame, and sparks leap skyward, landing like glowing seeds that vanish into the darkness. In that moment, standing in the center of your tiny domain in the vast rainforest, you feel the fragile pulse of hope flicker as brightly as the fire before you. You may be fevered, hungry, and isolated, but you are also armed with fire knowledge and defiance. The torch's light is a testament you will not fade into these woods without a fight. You lay the spent torch aside and return to the fire pit, propping your new bundle of kindling within easy reach. You pause to watch the embers swirl, and you whisper to them, "Keep burning, keep me alive." You feel the spark of your own resolve ignite, fueling the belief that your story is not over yet. The forest exhales around you, an ancient rumbling inhale of wind and life. You settle back on mossy ground, the leather pouch of medicine at your side, the flare launcher across your lap, and sip the last of your water. Your eyelids droop, but you force them open. You trace the shadowed outlines of the shelter and give yourself one last check: supplies secured, fire stoked, entry sealed. You lean back on your elbows and gaze upward at a patch of constellations faintly visible through the canopy. You remind yourself of distant skies at home, and you press a palm to your heart. Tonight you are not alone. You carry the hopes of countless survivors before you. Your torch may sputter, but your spirit will blaze on. You wake stiff and hungry, the embers of last night's fire reduced to a dull glow beneath ash. Morning light filters through the fronds, painting your shelter in muted greens and golds. Your stomach growls, and you rouse yourself, gathering your tools, the small knife, your satchel of bark and leaves, and the leather pouch of tonic. Today's mission is clear food. You need protein and calories to rebuild strength, but the rainforest offers both nourishment and hidden poisons. One wrong bite, and you'll barter a few hours of sustenance for a lifetime of regret. You step outside, wiping sleep from your eyes. Dew drips off each frond, sprinkling your shoulders in cold droplets. You survey the familiar clearing. Yesterday's preparations hold the trench channels run off the hearth. Stones ring the fire pit, and the torch cradle sits empty, ready for your return. You tuck the flare launcher into your belt, even though it's unlikely you'll use it for rescue here. It feels steadier against your side, a reminder that hope still glimmers beyond these walls. You venture into the undergrowth, knife in hand. Your first target, edible roots. You recall passing a patch of wild yams near the water hollow, a cluster of broad-leaved plants with pale tubers beneath. You follow a deer track that skirts the trench, ducking beneath low-hanging branches. The forest floor is a mosaic of decaying leaves and exposed roots. Every step risks disturbing hidden creatures. You pause at the yams, pulling back leaf litter to reveal smooth white skins. You dig around one with cupped hands, testing its firmness. It resists your initial tugs. You wedge the knife between root and earth, twisting gently until the tuber comes free with a squelch. You examine its tail, firm, unblemished, no milky sap, seeping signs it's safe to eat once cooked. You gather 3 yams, hefting their combined weight in a satchel. Each adds to your growing supplies of starch. Your fingers are already aching, but hunger dulls the pain. You press on, moving toward deadwood beds where you spotted beetle larvae last night. Protein, however repulsive, could be the edge you need. You crouch beside the fallen log you examined by torchlight. You turn it over with effort, revealing creamy grubs writhing amid damp sawdust. Their exoskeletons glisten fresh protein, and you pluck half a dozen into a leaf bowl. You pause, recalling survival training. Grubs are high in fat and protein, and if roasted until charred, their enzymes denature, making them safe. You rub your palms together, feeling grit and damp. You follow the trench back to camp, minding every root and twisted vine. The sun has fully awakened, and heat rises in waves. Sweat drips into your eyes, burning like acid. You hurry back, not wanting to spend too long exposed in the open. Once at the shelter, you fan coals back to life, stacking fresh sticks into a small blaze. You slice 1 yam into thick rounds, salting them with pinch of ash to draw out bitterness. You roast them on a sharpened stick over the flames, turning until edges brown and sugars caramelize. The scent is sweet, an intoxicating comfort in a battered world. You roast the grubs alongside skewered on another stick. They pop and sizzle as fat renders their bodies crisping in the heat. You lean forward, inhaling the smoky aroma. You can't help but smile at the juxtaposition. Fungus and salamanders might consider you foul, but here, at least for a moment, you feel in harmony with the jungle's harsh generosity. You nibble a yam slice, feeling its tender flesh break apart in your teeth. Warmth floods your belly, and you close your eyes as sweet starch coats your tongue. You chew a grub, next bracing yourself against its crunch. The outer shell fractures, releasing a nutty, oily interior that slides down your throat. You swallow, savoring the richness. It's awkward, unfamiliar, but you power through until both satchel and bowl are empty. Your energy returns in faint pulses. You wipe your mouth on your shirt sleeve and rise, gathering remaining sticks to stoke the fire higher. You need a cooking pot if you're going to process starches and roots properly, but that will have to wait until you craft one from clay. Until then, spit roasting will suffice. You pause, scanning the forest beyond the trench. The canopy hums with unseen life. Parrots screech overhead insects, drum against leaves, and a distant mammal's footfall echoes. Each sound reminds you that you are an intruder, yet you must press the advantage while the sun is high and predators less active. You tighten the vines on the shelter's back flap, reinforcing seams to prevent critters from sneaking in during your absence. Next, you venture toward a grove of bromeliads. You remember reading that certain bromeliad fillings yield sugary nectar. You follow a fallen vine, hand trailing through cool air pockets until you reach the cluster. Kneeling, you coax water and droplets from the rosettes into your cup, sweet, but not nourishing enough on its own. Then you notice ants crawling along the leaf edges. If you tilt one side of a bromeliad into your mouth, you risk biting an ant. You brush away the insects, then cup the leaf in your hand and bring its juice to your lips. Tiny sweetness. You swallow, feeling a flicker of calm. Your gaze shifts to a mossy bank where wild mushrooms sprout. Their caps are red with white speckles, a classic warning sign for toxicity. You step back immediately, heart hammering. Better to starve than seize poison. You remind yourself that mushrooms in the rainforest rarely follow temperate world rules. Appearances can deceive. You file that patch under avoid. You continue moving toward a shallow creek you glimpsed beyond the trench. If you catch small fish or tadpoles, they bring more protein. You navigate slippery stones, balancing on one leg to avoid twisting an ankle. The creek's water is clear, and you spot tiny silver flickers darting beneath the surface. You consider fashioning a spear, an idea long in gestation, and glance at the knife. You could whittle a thin stake, sharpen it, and hold it under a submerged log to impale passers-by. But your hands are still raw, and crafting may wait until you've recuperated more. Your eyes lock on a shallow pool where fish cluster in a feeding frenzy. You plunge a hand, scooping handfuls of slippery scales. One fish slips free and sprays water into your face. You cough, raking fish between fingers, then jam them into your satchel. They flop wetly against the yams. You chuckle at the absurd bundle, starch larvae and live fish. It's a grotesque pack, but it's your lifeline. You return to camp and drop the fish onto a flat stone. You pinch their gills, snapping spines, to dispatch them quickly. You cue them on your roasting stick and hold them over the fire until skin blisters and flesh flakes. You tear off a piece of fish, tasting at its tender, oily flesh. Salted with ash, it's robust, and freeing, a reminder that you once dined at restaurants far from this primitive table. But now you dine on life itself. You finish your impromptu feast, mid-afternoon energy, restored enough to consider your next moves. You feel a hum of satisfaction and pride. You scavenged starch, protein, and sweetness without poisoning yourself or falling prey to predators. Each bite was a contract with this world. You give effort and risk, you receive sustenance and survival. You scrape out the hearth and extinguish the fire-preserving coals beneath stones. You hang the extra fish and yams from a high branch beside the shelter out of reach of foraging animals. You repair the trench lip, ensuring water won't spill into your camp and wash away your defenses. You lean against the log that shelters the trench, watching water drip through leaves above it. You play with the idea of carving a fish trap, weaving vines into a funnel. But fatigue creeps in a languid pull against your bones. You take a deep breath, letting the post-meal satiety dull hunger pangs and replace them with calm. You rise, patting your shirt pocket where the tonic flask rests. Today's foraging bolsters your body, but tomorrow's fever wave could still bring you low. You must balance risk and reward more forage now, or conserve energy to fend off the next fever. You decide on a compromise patch. The shelter walls rest beside the coals and prepare a thin broth with root scraps for the evening. You gather the remnants of grub shells and fish bones, churn them in a hollowed bark cup with water, and let them steep over embers. It simmers into a cloudy broth, nourishment in every savory gulp. You sip slowly, tracing its warmth along your throat. You close your eyes, imagining home-cooked soup, safe walls, and a dry bed. That vision steadies you, reminding you that this ordeal will end, but only if you keep making the right choices. Forage wisely, cook thoroughly, rest enough, and stay vigilant. You lift the cup in a silent toast to your willpower, then drag the last log into place, sealing the hearth for the night. The forest hums around you, and you feel, despite fever and fatigue, a flicker of triumph. You are alive, you are fed, and you have earned the right to see tomorrow. Nightfall brings an uneasy hush to the rainforest, broken only by the rhythmic buzz of mosquitoes hunting by moonlight. You sit inside your patched lean-to, its fronds rubbed taut and lashed with fresh vines, and stare into the dying embers of your hearth. You have water, food, medicine, and your crude torch tucked safely to one side. Yet despite these small victories, you know the greatest threat still waits outside the relentless siege of mosquitoes, carrying more than just annoyance. Each bite is a potential invitation for another wave of malaria's fury. You push yourself upright and inch toward the frond wall, peeling back a flap to peer into the gloom. There, a cloud of insects hovers thickly around a glimmer of your torchlight. You feel a familiar tickle on your ankle and slap at it, fingers coming away wet with blood. A rush of anger surges through you, and you slam the flap shut, the fronds snapping back into place. The shelter is secure, but you can't seal yourself off forever. You pace the small floor space, boots heavy with mud, and weigh your options. There are swampy depressions beyond the trench where mosquitoes breed like a living tide. You need a barrier, something more than smoke and ash to keep them at bay. You glance at your shoulder strap satchel. You still carry twisted strips of bark coated in resin. They burn long and hot if you ignite them. Perhaps you can create a perimeter of glowing embers around your shelter to ward insects more effectively than smoke alone. You rise and step outside, mindful of each root and vine under your boots. You carry a handful of resin bark slivers and circle the shelter carefully, arranging them in a ring about 5 feet from the frond walls. Then you return to the hearth and coax the embers back to life, coaxing a small flame that you use to light one end of each bark strip. Soon, a ring of weak flames flickers around your domain, casting dancing shadows that chase away the mosquitoes. The heat radiates outward, and you watch as the black cloud disperses beyond your protective circle, feeling a momentary sense of control. You sit on a flat stone by the hearth, sipping the last of your evening broth. The smoke drifts over your ring of embers, scenting the air with resinous sharpness. You lean back, setting the leather pouch of tonic within reach. You know tomorrow brings another fever showdown, but for tonight you can rest without the constant drumming of wings in your ears. Your mind drifts as you stare into the flames. You remember your grandmother's voice, telling stories by the hearth of her own childhood struggles, how she survived floods, famines, and heartbreaks with nothing but her wits and will. You wonder if she ever imagined you stranded in a rainforest, fighting for every breath. You close your eyes, letting the warmth of the fire and memory wrap around you like a blanket. A sudden rustle snaps you back. You sit up, eyes narrowing at the shelter's entrance. Beyond the frond door, shadows swirl in the firelight. You grip the machete-length stick you carved earlier, the one you fashioned into a spear, and inch toward the flap. Heart pounding, you slip the spear through a gap and push the frond aside. Nothing moves, just branches swaying in the breeze. Yet your pulse races adrenaline flooding your veins. You release a breath and pull the flap back into place. Tension drains from your shoulders, replaced by a hollow ache in your chest. You realize that fear is a predator, as dangerous as any animal. Keeping it at bay is as vital as any medicine or meal. You lean forward and pick up a small stone, rolling it between your palms. You will not bow to terror. You will acknowledge it, then set it aside. You rise and retrieve your cup, pouring fresh water from your purified cache. You sip deliberately, tasting the clean mineral tang. Each drop reminds you of yesterday's triumph at the water hollow, of your ability to transform risk into survival. You set the cup down and unsheath the tonic flask, measuring a dose for your nightly regimen. The bitter liquid slides down your throat, leaving a cooling aftertaste that eases your joints and dampens fever spikes. You pause to listen. The rainforest night is alive, with sound crickets rummaging through leaf litter frogs, calling from hidden pools, distant footsteps of small mammals. Nothing too close. You feel a thrill in this world. You are the only human sound, yet you can blend in or stand out at will. You are both guest and guardian of this domain. A moment passes, and you decide to fortify your mind as well as your shelter. You crouch and retrieve a handful of fern fronds you gathered earlier, drying now beside the embers. You lay them in a tidy pile inside the shelter near your feet. You will burn them in the morning, creating a high plume of smoke to clear out insects before your next venture. Preemptive measures, each small action stacking like bricks to build your fortress against the jungle. Your eyelids grow heavy, but you fight sleep for a few more minutes. You sling the lever-action flare launcher over your shoulder an odd comfort, its brightness reserved for true emergencies. You place it atop a flat stone within arm's reach. You won't draw it unless the stakes call for a skyfire beacon, but knowing it's there bolsters your resolve. Finally, you slide down to the shelter floor, leaning back against the trunk. The ring of embers beyond the fronds crackles softly, a heartbeat of light against the darkness. You close your eyes, focusing on the rhythm of your breath. Inhale 3 seconds. Exhale 4 seconds. You feel the tension melt, replaced by a fragile calm. The mosquitoes grind their wings at the barrier, but they cannot cross. You are safe until the dawn. In the final moments of wakefulness, you reflect on this day's trials, reinforcing defenses, stocking fuel, gathering food, overcoming fever's delirium. You realize survival is a mosaic of small choices, each one critical. One slip, no barrier around the shelter, skipped dose of tonic, or poisonous bite could unravel everything. A soft snore escapes you as sleep claims you, not the fevered dreams that tormented you before, but a tentative light slumber. You rest atop a coarse mat of fronds, cocooned within your handmade fortress. Outside, the embers burn on, warding off the darkness and its silent wings. And as you drift under the indifferent stars woven into the canopy, you promise yourself tomorrow you will do it all again, stronger, wiser, undefeated. Your eyes crack open to a suffocating silence, broken only by distant, mournful howls that echo through the trees like lost souls. The embers beyond your frond walls have cooled to dim orange dots, and the ring of resin bark sparks is all but exhausted. You rise, joints stiff with overnight chills, and grab your spear, your only weapon against whatever prowls the darkness. Moonlight filters through gaps overhead, painting mottled patterns on the forest floor. You grip the spear's shaft with both hands, knuckles whitening, and press a foot against the lean-to's frond flap, easing it open. Outside, the jungle seems to hold its breath. The usual chorus of insects and frogs has fallen silent, replaced by subtle creaks and rustles that make your heart slam against your ribs. A branch snaps somewhere to your left, and you whirl torch held aloft. Its flame flickers weakly, but it's enough to reveal a pack of sleek, four-legged shapes slipping between the trees. Their eyes reflect your light copper beads, floating in shadow. You freeze, spear angled in front of you, every nerve ablaze. You know these aren't wolves or big cats. Your guides warned that feral wild dogs might roam these parts in small scavenging packs. They circle at a distance, sizing you up. You taste the acrid sting of fear, but adrenaline floods in, anchoring you to the moment. You jab the spear forward, shouting a guttural roar that surprises even you. The dogs scatter, yelping, but not fleeing, testing your bluff. You advance torch, angled to expose each animal in turn, and they back away until darkness reclaims them. Your chest heaves, breath ragged. You drop the torch into the trench, shielding the fronds, and toss a handful of embers onto the forest floor. Sparks scatter amid dry leaves, sizzling as they land, then flicker out. The scent of burnt resin lingers, and you exhale a slow, steady breath, muscles relaxing just enough to let your ribs expand. You tap your spear against your palm, proof that you can defend your small territory. But the howls persist, a mournful counterpoint to the dog's distant retreat. You realize you aren't safe yet. Something larger prowls just beyond the torch's reach, something heavy that shakes the ground with each step. You stare into the blackness, spear at the ready torch raised. Your pulse drums in your ears. A low rumble vibrates through the earth. You stiffen. Leaves tremble above branches sway without wind. The rumble grows, and you catch the gleam of white fangs and a massive muzzle emerging from the undergrowth, a caiman, its scaly hide nearly invisible in the moonlight. It slinks toward the trench, drawn by the scent of fresh water and the promise of prey. Its eyes lock on yours. You lock eyes in return, recognizing that neither of you can afford to blink. You jab the spear into the muddy trench bottom, creating a barrier between you. The caiman's head flicks side to side, nostrils flaring steely yellow eyes unblinking. It lets out a low hiss, a bubbling growl that makes your spine tighten. You raise the torch, aiming the flame at its scaly snout. It recoils briefly, firelight dancing across mud-caked armor. Realizing the trench is too shallow to stop it, you take a calculated risk. You step forward, brandishing the spear. "Go away," you shout, voice raw. You plant your feet firmly, hips squared. The caiman lunges, jaws snapping shut, inches from your spear, water erupting around you. You twist backward, yanking the spear free just in time. You slam the weapon down behind you, forcing the beast to retreat. Your heart thunderclaps as you back away, torch clutched to your chest. You can almost taste the copper of adrenaline on your tongue. The caiman retreats into the brush, with a final hiss vanishing into the ink-black water beyond the trench. You stand trembling, every sense screaming, and yet you survived. Again, you wipe sweat and blood from your brow. One of the stray dog bites or thorns scraped you without noticing, and return to the shelter. You slip inside and slam the flap shut, knotting vines tight. You lean against the trunk spear pressed to your side and draw a pitched breath. The rhythmic beat of your heart slows. The forest resumes its hidden chorus, chirps, rustles, distant croaks. You realize the night is far from over. Your fever still simmers beneath your skin, and sleep is impossible now. Instead, you must remain vigilant until dawn's first light. You huddle in a corner, clutching your spear, and scan the frond walls for weaknesses. The shelter stands, but only just. You note fronds loosened during your absence, and tighten their lashings with trembling hands. Your toes brush against the cup of boiled water you left to cool. You clutch it, sipping the last warm drops that chase away shivers. You uncork the tonic flask, next pouring a dose into the cup's bottom and consuming it in a single gulp. The bitterness burns your throat, but the cooling aftertaste eases your aches, and you press your palm to the spot where the spear rests against you, feeling its solidity. A faint clicking draws your attention to the flint rock near the hearth. You pick it up and strike small sparks onto a dry leaf tucked in a corner of the shelter, coaxing them into a soft glow. A sliver of flame ignites, and you hold it under a handful of resin bark to rebuild a small lantern. The flicker reveals every frond seam, every vine lashing. You inspect and reinforce, preventing another surprise invasion. With your makeshift lantern in hand and spear at the ready, you circle the shelter's interior. Each step echoes softly against earth and bark. You glance at the ceiling. A moth flutters near a dried patch where you've hung extra leaves. You catch it between thumb and forefinger and hold it to the flame. It disintegrates in a puff of smoke. A small triumph, another vector removed. The caiman and wild dogs were harbingers of the jungle's hidden dangers, each encounter a reminder that survival demands unrelenting vigilance. You crouch by the glow of the lantern eyes, scanning every shadow. The earthen floor beneath you feels alive, as if roots crawl beneath the dirt, seeking weakness. You grip the spear's shaft and whisper an oath you will not be taken unawares again. Time slows. You count heartbeats as the jungle's nocturnal orchestra resumes. You sit cross-legged, lantern illuminating the fronds in warm amber. You let your gaze soften, focusing on the steady flame. You close your eyes for a moment, willing calm to replace tension, and feel the spear's wood press against your side, proof that you stand your ground. Eventually, exhaustion gnaws at your resolve, but you can not afford full sleep. Instead, you practice a technique learned in training, micro-sleeps, bouts of rest lasting no more than 20 seconds, enough to let your body recharge without losing full awareness. You lean back against the trunk lantern at your knee and allow your eyelids to droop. You drift in and out of consciousness, senses tuned to any shift in the shelter's atmosphere, the slightest creak or breath of wind. Hours pass in this liminal state. The howls and hisses fade into the endless chorus of frogs and insects. Dawn's first gray light seeps through frond cracks, and you abandon the lantern, letting its last flickers die. The jungle awakens gradually. Bird calls break the nocturnal spell, and the air warms. You stand, testing your legs, spear still firm in your grip. You have outlasted the night's terror. Your body battered, your spirit scarred but unbroken. You step outside into the misty dawn, spear and torch in hand. The trench fills with dew, and the calls of morning birds offer a tentative greeting. You raise the torch overhead, its dim glow extinguished by daylight. You smile wanly, spreading arms to embrace the sun's arrival. You survived another night of terror, pushing back both beast and fevered hallucination. You lean the spear against your shelter and prepare to start anew. Patch fronds rebuild fire and gather resources. But in this moment, you simply stand in the gentle light, letting your lungs fill with clean air and your mind absorb the triumph of dawn. You will face the rainforest once more, but you have proven your mettle in the night of terror. You have fought, and you have endured. You wake to the stale scent of sweat and ash mussels sour from the night of terror. Your spear lies within reach, but your body trembles too much to lift it. Every joint protests as you shift upright, the lean-to's fronds brushing your cheek like cold fingers. You press a palm to your rib cage, wincing as a sharp shard of pain blooms where the crash's broken bone has never quite healed. The fever's ebb leaves you both relieved and unnerved. Your strength diminished by another nocturnal battle. The shelter's interior is a clutter of half-used embers, dried leaf bundles, and tools strewn from last night's frantic checks. Your torch's charred stub rests against the trunk. You inhale the smoky air, recognizing it as both comfort and warning. You cannot afford to falter now. You need to rebuild your reserves, but today's battle isn't against beasts, it's against your own weakening body. You push yourself to standing shoulders, slumped under exhaustion. You step outside into the gentle light of early morning. Dew clings to every surface, glistening fronds, muddy earth, and your soggy boots. The trench around the shelter still holds a ring of embers, now cooled and damp. Mosquitoes hover just beyond, hesitant to cross the charred boundary. You inhale deeply, tasting the freshness of dawn, and steel yourself for the day's challenge. Your stomach grumbles, a hollow reminder that your last real meal was a day ago. You rummage through the satchel for any last ration of tonic or broth. Instead, you find only a quarter cup of meager broth and a slug of water. You swallow both, wincing at the bitter aftertaste. No energy there, but caffeine. No tonic can't substitute. You must forage again, but your limbs feel leaden. You consider skipping foraging and focusing on reinforcing the shelter. But hunger gnaws at your focus. Weakness invites mistakes. You decide on a compromise. A quick forage close to camp, then immediate rest and repairs. First fire. You coax the embers back to life by sheltering them under a leaf and blowing gently until sparks ignite. You feed on small dry sticks until the hearth crackles. Heat warms your hands and throat. You slip the spear into the fire's side, letting the tip glow red, an improvised poker to press embers into hidden crevices of the trench, ensuring the mosquito barrier holds. With warmth and light secured, you grab your knife and head to the edge of the water hollow, less than 50 paces away. Each step throbs in your legs. The world tilts when you navigate the root-strewn path. You wobble, but press on, driven by necessity. At the hollow's edge, the water surface mirrors the sky. You dip your vine ladle and drink deeply, savoring the cool liquid. You chase it with tonic dregs, willing life back into your veins. Next, protein. You spot the fallen log where you harvested grubs. You approach with hollow dread, each crawl of insects reminding you of your frailty. You turn the log over and find fewer larvae this time, half a dozen pale bodies writhing in small crevices. You pluck them and shudder, but hold them away from your face. Better this than collapse. You return to camp and roast the grubs over the fire until they darken and crisp. Energy seeps back into your muscles with each nervous gulp. It's hardly gourmet, but it fuels you. You sip more water, feeling the burn of dehydration fade. Your body protests the effort. A wave of dizziness washes over you as you finish the last grub. You grip the spear, bracing against a tree trunk. You press your lips together, suppressing a wave of nausea. You realize your stomach is empty, beyond starch and fat. You need complex carbs. The yams you stored hang overhead, but you lack the energy to boil or roast them properly. You settle for ripping a small yam in half and chewing a raw chunk. Its starchy flesh grates at your gums, but you power through until you can swallow. You feel the energy trickle back in slow pulses. Not enough, but it's something. You sit on a flat stone, leaning on your spear, and breathe deeply. The forest around you hums with morning life, birds weaving melodies, insects rattling leaves, and distant mammal calls. The world moves indifferent to your suffering, yet your will persists. You close your eyes, focusing on the rise and fall of your chest, counting breaths to steady the tremor in your limbs. After several minutes, you rise and inspect your shelter. The frond walls have sagged under last night's humidity, leaving gaps that could admit water, let alone insects. You stretch vines and weave in fresh leaves, sealing cracks. Your fingers bleed from scraping bark, but you ignore the sting. You lash a sturdy branch behind the lean-to, reinforcing the framework. The added support creaks under pressure, promising resilience against future storms. As you work, your legs tremble, and the world tilts again. You sway and catch yourself against the trunk. Another wave of fever threatens, a reminder that the malaria still courses through your veins. You pause, pressing a cool leaf to your forehead. You sip the remaining bitter tonic, hoping the salicin and bark will hold the parasite at bay. You stretch the medicine dose by rinsing your mouth and swallowing every drop. The sweat on your brow cools instantly, and you grit your teeth against the second chill of the day. You patch one final seam in the fronds, then step back and survey your handiwork. The lean-to stands taller, sturdier, a frail fortress tempered by necessity. You slip inside and sit cross-legged beside the hearth. The spear leans against the trunk. The fire crackles, and the air tastes of resin and earth. You lean your head back, closing your eyes as exhaustion floods in. You feel each bruise cut and the remnant spike of fever as a testament to your survival so far. You fight the urge to collapse. Instead, you perform one last task. You tie your leather pouch of medicine to a central vine high above the hearth, ensuring it stays dry and out of reach of critters. You tuck your knife and flare launcher within reach, then exhale. The world tilts once more, and you brace. You have reached the limit of your body's endurance. Your hands go numb, and your vision narrows. You know you must rest or risk tipping into a fever-induced coma. Summoning every ounce of will, you lie back on a bed of fronds, wrap an arm around the spear, and let your eyelids fall. You drift, teetering between consciousness and oblivion. The fire's glow warms your face, and the scent of resin lulls you. You vow that if you wake, you will muster the strength to reclaim your body and continue the fight. Surrender is not an option. You wake to a faint rustling outside your shelter, a gentle crack of twigs that sounds almost tentative. Your body protests as you rise, muscles slack from yesterday's exertions, and fever's toll. You wrap an arm around your spear and push aside the frond flap. Morning mist clings to the forest floor, and the world feels muted, a silver hush broken only by the steady drip of condensation. You step out, torch in hand, and scan the damp undergrowth. That's when you see it, a small shape, huddled beneath a broad banana leaf, its fur matted with blood and leaves. At first, you think it's a discarded piece of debris or the wind teasing a fallen vine, but then a high-pitched whimper draws you closer. You crouch and glimpse dark eyes wide with pain. A capuchin monkey no bigger than a house cat, its left forearm twisted at an unnatural angle. It trembles, body racked with shallow breaths, its small silhouette outlined against the dripping leaf. Your heart clenches. Here in this savage place, you are both prey and predator, but also perhaps a savior. You lower the torch, careful not to scorch frozen fur, and kneel several feet away. The monkey flinches at the flame's glow and hisses softly, fear and pain tangled in its cry. You raise a hand, palm out the universal gesture, and whisper in a low, soothing voice, "Easy, easy." Your own voice rattles, unused to tender tones. The monkey's head tilts, black eyes wary. You reach into your satchel and extract a small cloth pouch, your medicine resting place. Inside is the remainder of your bitter bark and root tonic, now tepid. You unscrew the flask's makeshift resin seal and pour a teaspoon into a leaf cup you fashion from a broad frond. The monkey's eyes track your movements, head cocking as the scent of bitter medicine drifts toward it. You don't know if this tonic can ease its pain, but it helped you stave off fever, so perhaps it can dull agony here too. You place the leaf cup on the ground 2 feet away and step back, spear lowered but at the ready. The monkey's gaze flicks between you and the cup. Its chest heaves as if measuring the risk. You stay, still breath steadying. Time stretches the forest's morning chorus, fading into a soft drone. You recall the survival adage, care for another life, and it may care for you in turn. Slowly the monkey inches forward, limbs stiff from injury. You resist the urge to reach out. A broken limb could break further at your touch. It sniffs the cup whiskers trembling, then noses the liquid. It backs away, shuddering in disgust at the bitter taste, but thirst wins out. It dips lower laps carefully, and you exhale. The tonic trickles down its throat, and its chest relaxes, as if the bitterness numbed internal throbbing. You reach into your satchel again and produce a bandage wrap your last roll of cloth torn from your shirt. You wave the strip, indicating to the monkey that you wish to help. It eyes the cloth warily, but hunger and pain trump fear. You lay the strip on a flat rock, then carefully place your knife beside it. You cut a length of frond fiber stronger and more forgiving than cloth, and dampen it with a few drops of boiled water from your flask. You dip into the saline you prepared for cleaning wounds and wipe away dried blood from the monkey's arm, wincing as it chirrups in protest. Its wound is jagged fang marks or a snap of its own bone. You rinse the frayed fur away and press a crushed leaf poultice, the salicin leaves you harvested earlier, onto the laceration. The anti-inflammatory properties soothe swelling, and you wrap the fiber strip like a crude sling. The monkey hisses at each tug of fiber, but you use a soft voice and slow motions, reminding it that you are not the predator. When the dressing is secure, the monkey sniffs its arm, then looks at you as if seeing you for the first time. You tap your chest with your fist and nod, "I am your ally." The monkey blinks, and then, to your astonishment, reaches out a trembling hand. You hold your breath as its tiny fingers brush your palm. The impulse to recoil warps your instincts, but you steel yourself. You press your palm to your heart and murmur, "We'll get through this." The monkey clambers onto your knee, seeking warmth. You let it crouched with one arm cradling it against your chest, the other holding the torch. Its body is small, but surprisingly heavy. You feel its rapid heartbeat, a frantic drum that matches your own. You whisper reassurance, tapping the fiber bandage. You don't know if it trusts you, but for now it accepts your presence. Above you, the canopy shifts, with a breeze sending motes of mist swirling around the two of you. You look down and see a scar on the monkey's chest, an old wound not fatal, but evidence of past survival battles. You finish your inspection, then scoop up the leaf cup and pour a few more drops of tonic onto its tongue, silencing its soft protests. Your bond forged in necessity. You rise with the monkey tucked safely in your shirt. You'll need to carry it back to shelter to keep it alive, and perhaps in return, it will warn you of approaching dangers, its keen senses far sharper than yours. You balance your spear between your teeth, torch cradled against the side of your head, and begin the careful trek back over slippery roots. Each step is a test. The monkey's weight shifts your center of gravity, and you nearly slip on a mossy stone. You steady yourself, hissing a soft rebuke, and it stills. You grip the frond flap and pull yourself into the lean-to, collapsing onto the bed of dry fronds. You lay the monkey down gently atop a clean leaf and arrange sticks around it to form a tiny barrier against insects. You return to the hearth and coax the embers into a warm glow. You lay another fresh frond beneath the monkey's head, splashing a little boiled water beside it so it can hydrate when it stirs. You sit cross-legged spear at your side and meet its gaze. It flinches but does not flee. Instead, it curls against your side and closes its eyes, exhaustion overtaking it. You exhale a breath you didn't know you held. You place a hand over its patched arm and murmur rest. We'll watch each other. The monkey's chest rises and falls with slow, ragged breaths. Outside the rainforest hums with the mid-morning chorus birds, insects, and distant animal calls. Inside, a fragile peace holds between two wounded survivors. You tilt your head back, reflecting on the unexpected gift of companionship. In this unforgiving place, you had grown used to solitude as a shield. But now the monkey's presence reminds you that empathy can be a weapon too, one that sharpens your senses and strengthens your resolve. You sit in quiet vigil, the two of you united by pain and perseverance. As the fire crackles softly, you reach for your tonic flask and pour a small amount into your own cup. You sip slowly, thinking of the journey ahead, more foraging, more vigilance, and now the responsibility of caring for another life. You press a finger to your lips and smile at the sleeping monkey. We'll survive this, you whisper, together. You wake to the rhythmic call of toucans and macaws echoing through the canopy, a chorus of urgent whistles urging you onward. Morning light filters in brittle shafts through your frond walls, and you feel the fading pulse of fever in your veins. The capuchin monkey stirs beside you, blinking groggily, but you focus only on the calls beyond the trench. Somewhere out there lies open ground, a clearing, a riverbank, perhaps a path back to civilization. Today you decide you will find it. You push yourself up, spear in one hand and torch stub in the other, monkey cradled against your side. The fronds rattle as you slip through the flap exiting your sanctuary into damp undergrowth. The trench's embers have cooled to gray ash, but a ring of damp resin bark still smolders faintly, warding off early mosquitoes. You step over it, careful not to smother any remaining heat, and march toward the east, where the bird calls sounded the loudest. Each step is an effort. Your ribs throb, legs tremble, and sweat drips from your brow. Yet the percussion of avian voices quickens your heart and steadies your pace. You follow a deer's trail, roots worn smooth by hooves weaving between towering ferns and vine-draped trunks. The monkey clings to you, small fingers gripping your shirt, and you whisper reassurance. Almost there. Stay with me. The jungle around you hums with life. The stink of decaying wood, the sweetness of wild orchids, the moist breath of a world that neither forgives nor forgets. You crush a leaf in your palm and inhale its sharp scent, using it to wash away the taste of tonic. You swallow hard, feeling grit catch in your throat, and press on. The bird calls grow louder, less distant, as if guiding you like a living map through the sea of green. Suddenly the ferns thin, and you emerge onto a slight rise. Your chest constricts with hope. Beyond lies a patch of open sky, pale blue and impossible. You scramble upward, heart hammering, and step onto a muddy embankment overlooking a wide river that glints like molten silver between trees. The current flows thick and slow, carrying leaves and driftwood downstream. On the opposite bank, sunlit grassland rolls toward the horizon. You gasp at the sight, a surge of triumph threatening to bring tears to your eyes. Civilization may not be within sight, but this riverbank is a lifeline, a route you can follow to safety. You set the monkey down on a patch of fern, and it stumbles before perching on a rockhead, tilted as it surveys the scene. Its dark eyes glisten with curiosity and relief. You crouch by the river's edge and scoop water with cupped hands, tasting its cool purity. No bitter tang, no lingering smoke, just clean life. You fill your cup and sip, feeling energy pulse through your veins. You scatter a few drops of tonic into the water for safety, then gulp it down. You feel the ache in your bones ease, and your mind sharpens with purpose. You scan the far bank, searching for signs of passage footprints, a makeshift raft, or even fishermen's nets. None are visible, but glints of cloth and broken branches could be signs of prior travelers or local tribes. You tuck the monkey into your satchel for warmth and quick transport, then stand and survey the riverbank you face. The current's gentle roar and bird calls from the grassland form a symphony of rescue. You spot a fallen log stretching from a stilted root toward a shallow stretch of water. It might serve as a temporary bridge, but it looks unstable. You consider fashioning a raft from logs and vines, but your energy is low. Instead, you follow the river's edge to a broader spit of sand where the water laps softly, offering ample footing. You take careful steps along the bank, spear poised to ward off aquatic predators. You remember the caiman's glare from last night and keep a wary eye on ripples near the shore. The monkey chirps softly, sensing your tension. You press a finger to its side, a promise you'll protect it. In the distance, you see movement. Two figures crouched beside the water, their shapes fuzzy through heat haze and vegetation. You pause, heart pounding. They could be hunters, fishermen, or threats. You duck behind a thick palm and watch. A man and a woman, clothed in light fabric, gather fish with spears similar to yours. They speak in low tones, their language unfamiliar but not threatening. Their movements are deliberate, respectful of the river's rhythm. You step from your hiding spot, hands raised in peace, torch lowered so as not to scare them. The woman glances up, eyes widening. You nod, pointing first to yourself, then to them, then to the river, gesturing help. You speak in broken phrases: water, food, rescue. The man and woman exchange glances, then beckon you forward with cautious smiles. Relief floods you so strongly you almost stumble. You descend the bank, mud sucking at your boots, and approach with slow, measured steps. The monkey peeks from your satchel, its small body wrapped against your chest. You reach the pair and lower yourself to one knee. They circle you, hands extended first to your spear, then to your ragged clothing. Concern lines their faces. You show them your cuts and bruises, pointing to your head, chest, arms, and throat, indicating fever. They murmur words you don't understand, but accompanied by gestures, a pointing at their mouths, eat at their pots, and fish cooked, and at themselves, we help. Then they point toward a village, visible across a gentle rise, in the grassland, a few thatched huts clustered near a grove of palms. Joy wells inside you, tight and bright. You exhale, tasting hope. You scoop the monkey free, offering it to the woman who cradles the small creature gently. The woman utters a soft coo, stroking its patched arm. You nod, gratitude voice raw. They gesture for you to follow downriver, away from the jungle's embrace. You cradle your spear and torch in one hand, monkey in the other, and walk with them along the water's edge. Each step feels lighter than the last, each breath less labored. You follow the river's curve, the village drawing closer as birds wheel overhead and the sun climbs. At a bend, the man stops and holds his hand to his ear, listening. You turn to see smoke spiraling from a small hut's cooking fire. The scent of fish roasting fills the air, mingled with sweet palm oil. You close your eyes, let the aroma ground you in reality, and smile. You have escaped the rainforest's merciless grip and found refuge. Together, you emerge onto the sandy bank of the village, greeted by curious children and solemn elders. You set the monkey down its tiny feet, patting uncertainly on sand, and look toward the huts. A woman steps forward, water and cooked fish in her hands, serving you both without hesitation. You bow in gratitude, tears pricking your eyes as you accept the food. The monkey squeaks, reaching for the fish. You settle onto a woven mat spear and torch laid beside you like old friends. You take a bite, the smoky flesh melting on your tongue, and feel the stiff bonds of solitude fall away. You turn to your new companions and utter the only words that matter now: thank you. You wake to the sun's warmth, pressing through the palm-thatched roof of a humble hut, not the suffocating green of the rainforest. The scent of smoked fish and baking root bread drifts in on a breeze scented with sea salt and wood smoke. Confusion flares when you sit up on a woven mat spear and torch nowhere in sight. Your body throbs with unfamiliar comfort. No fever shakes, no insects buzzing in your ears. You realize you are alive and safe. A pair of gentle hands guides your head back to the mat before offering a bowl of clear broth. You lift it with trembling fingers and sip the steaming liquid. It coats your throat, easing the dryness of days spent in fever's grip. You glance around the open-sided dwelling. Villagers move quietly, attending to daily chores, their children peeking with curious eyes. None of them seem afraid of you. Instead, their faces are empathetic welcoming. You swallow and touch your chest, recalling the night of terror and the caiman's eyes. You close your eyes, letting gratitude wash over you. You are thirsty, but more than that, you are free from the jungle's siege. Your saviors, strangers, have risked their own safety to guide you here. You step to your feet, legs wobbly like saplings in wind, and clutch the bowl with both hands. The village elder, stooped and wrinkled, meets your gaze and announces something in a gentle tongue you don't understand. The woman who first tended the capuchin monkey motions you to follow. You rise, leaving the mat behind, and walk slowly, each step a revelation of stability. The elder pats your shoulder, offering a smile that speaks louder than words. You belong here now. They lead you to a communal fire where a pot simmers over coals. The monkey perches on the woman's shoulder, its small head peeking from her sarong. You kneel beside the fire's glow spear and torch resting against a post, like trophies of your journey. You watch as the pot is ladled into an earthenware bowl, then handed to you. The food is simple steamed tuber with greens and shredded fish, but it tastes of home. You eat slowly, savoring each bite without fear of insects or hallucinations. A boy no older than 10 approaches, offering a carved wooden pipe. You grimace unsure until the elder gestures to the monkey, and the boy places the pipe's mouthpiece gently between its lips. The monkey inhales a faint puff of sweet-smelling smoke, then exhales, its eyes widening in surprise. The sight elicits laughter from villagers, and you too cannot suppress a smile. The bond between you and the monkey has yielded new camaraderie here. As you eat, you listen to the river's distant murmur, a constant companion since your escape from the jungle. You realize the river that once threatened with caimans and currents has transformed into a lifeline. It carried you not just physically, but spiritually, from darkness into community. When your bowl is empty, you bow deeply in thanks. The elder responds with a soft blessing, touching your forehead, and then the monkey's passing goodwill through touch. You bow again, tears pooling in your eyes. You have been given life twice, once by your own ingenuity and courage, and again by the kindness of strangers. They guide you to a raised platform of woven reeds where you can rest. You lie down, pulling a thin blanket over you. The monkey curls beside you, its warmth, a comfort you never knew you needed. You close your eyes, breathing in the smoke-scented air, and feel a deep peace settle in your chest. In that moment, you reflect on every choice that brought you here: the makeshift shelter, the boiled water, the bitter tonic, the shelter's reinforcements, the foraging for grub and fish, the torch that chased shadows, and the tender care you offered to a wounded creature. Each decision was a thread woven into the tapestry of survival. A soft breeze stirs the reeds overhead, and you slip into a dreamless sleep, the rainforest's horrors replaced by the lull of community life. You will awaken with a new purpose to repay this village's kindness, to learn their ways, and to carry their hospitality back to the world you left behind. You awaken to the antiseptic sting of fluorescent lights, the steady beep of a monitor, and the narrow confines of crisp white sheets. Your body is lighter here than it was on that sandy riverbank or deep within the crush of the rainforest, but your mind still drifts back to every leafed corridor of that green hell. You push your eyelids open and blink against the harsh glow, searching for anchors in this sterile room. A single window reveals a sky that is impossibly blue, unmarred by shifting fronds and heavy clouds. You sit up slowly, muscles protesting at unfamiliar softness. Your chest rises and falls without the agony of fever, the phantom aches in your ribs, a dull echo of past torment. You reach down and find your left arm wrapped in a pristine sling, no splintered branches or crude bush wiring, just neat bandages. Beside you, a small wooden crate holds a carved figure of a capuchin monkey, the one you tended your unexpected ally, its painted eyes glinting in the light. You trace the monkey's familiar curve, and your heart tightens. A nurse enters, clipboard in hand, and smiles. You manage a nod, voice hoarse. "Where am I?" you whisper. She replies softly, "You're at the regional clinic near the river plain where your rescuers live. You were flown here after villagers brought you across the water. Relief and guilt swirl in your chest. Relief to be alive in civilization, guilt for leaving behind the tiny hand that once clutched yours. You press a hand to your forehead as a memory flares, the moment you locked eyes with the caiman in the moonlit trench, the hiss that threatened to end your story. You recall the wild dog's yips, the hallucinations crawling at the edges of fevered nights, and the crackle of your torch swinging through the darkness. The sterile room feels impossibly distant from those dangers, yet you carry them inside you like scars woven into every memory. A doctor enters next, gentle steps against the linoleum floor. He checks your IV line, confirms your vitals, then pauses at the carved capuchin. His brow lifts. "Your story is remarkable," he says, voice low. You attempt a wry smile. Rescued by villagers, cared for an injured monkey, then guided to safety, he continues. You close your eyes, thinking of that morning when you offered bitter tonic to a trembling creature, your first demonstration of empathy in a place that only demanded brutality. He speaks of your recovery timeline: physical therapy for lingering rib fractures, continued anti-malarial treatment, nutritional support, and you nod. Each clinical term feels like a vow you will continue the fight, not in the jungle now, but here in a bed far from vines. You will not squander this second chance. Left alone for a moment, you run a finger over the carved monkey and remember its tiny warmth against your chest. You recall the villagers' laughter as you watched the boy offer smoke to your companion, their unexpected camaraderie blooming in a lean-to of fronds. You remember the taste of smoky fish by that riverbank, the sight of the village emerging beyond the flow, tiny huts rising like sheltering arms. Tears sting your eyes. You fought disease elements and your own faltering body to reach that place of safety, only to discover community thrives even in the world's edge. You realize that in the rainforest's unyielding maze, kindness and cooperation were your true lifelines, not just your flare or spear. Footsteps announce the nurse's return with a tray of clear juice and a small plate of fruit. The colors vibrant melon papaya and a slice of banana feel decadent after days of bitter bark and gritty broth. You pick up a piece of papaya and taste sweet redemption, the flavor lighting a spark of joy in your chest. You chew slowly, savoring each bite as if it were the first meal after a lifetime of struggle. As you rest the plate aside, you allow yourself to reflect on the lessons etched into your memory. Preparation and adaptability can stave off death for a time, but it was compassion first to yourself, then to a wounded creature that unlocked your salvation. You realize the rainforest did more than test your survival skills. It taught you the power of interdependence, of sharing burdens and hope. Your gaze drifts to the window, where the sky's light curves soft clouds like distant fronds. You imagine the river's current still flowing, carrying leaves and driftwood toward unknown seas. You picture the villagers watching water's edge at dawn, wondering if you'd return. You vow that when you're well, you will find a way back to thank them, to see the carved huts, to perhaps reunite with your monkey friend, if it survived. A soft beep draws your attention back to the monitor. Your heart rate steadies. Your oxygen saturation is normal. You inhale that fact gratefully, letting sterile stability fill you. But you also feel something deeper, a quiet reverence for the wild that nearly consumed you and the community that saved you. You will honor both lessons. You press a hand to the carved capuchin one last time, memorizing its painted smile. You whisper, "Thank you for reminding me I'm not alone." The room's emptiness responds with silence, but inside you a warmth blooms, gratitude for survival, empathy, and the people and creatures who guided you. Your journey started with a crash, but it ends here in a bed that feels miles away from that green abyss. Yet the rainforest's pulse beats within you, still a memory of danger and compassion entwined. You know your life is forever altered by that trial, by pain and fear, but also by generosity and hope. You close your eyes, letting the day's gentle light wash over you. You carry both the scars and the story, resolved to share them beyond these walls. You will tell of the rainforest's reckless fury and its unexpected kindness of bitter tonics and carved spears of a monkey's trust and a village's open arms. And as you drift into a restful sleep, you feel the final piece of your transformation click into place. You are a survivor, not just by skill, but by heart. You have journeyed with me from the moment of impact, deep in an uncharted rainforest, to the quiet sanctity of a hospital bed. Along the way, you faced savage storms, venomous flora, and the invisible threat of malaria. Each step demanded ingenuity, building shelters from palm fronds, coaxing fire from damp tinder, foraging bitter roots, and protein-rich grubs, fashioning torches and barriers against relentless mosquitoes. Yet beyond survival tactics, the story reveals a deeper truth, the power of empathy. Offering bitter tonic to a wounded capuchin monkey, You forged an alliance that shone as brightly as any rescue flare. Guided by villagers who risked their own safety, you found your way out of darkness and into community. Tonight's narrative shows that survival is not a solitary struggle, but a tapestry woven with every act of kindness, yours and others. The rainforest tested your body and mind, but it was compassion, resourcefulness, and cooperation that triumphed over fear. May this tale remind you that in the harshest arenas of life, reaching out with help and humility can light the way forward. As you digest these lessons of resilience and interdependence, carry them into your own trials. When the night seems unending, remember that even a single spark, a simple act of care, can guide you home.